She said I just existed while cutting into salmon I paid for. Compared me to her friend's perfect husband who rebuilt decks and planned surprise trips. I looked at her calmly and said 5 words that ended 22 years of marriage. Next morning, she found my ring on the kitchen table with a letter. When she read it, she collapsed. That's when her real nightmare began, discovering who I actually was and what she just lost forever. My name is Mitchell Carlson. I'm 44, and until that Tuesday night, I thought I had a decent marriage. I work as a welder, or that's what my wife Eileen tells people. She leaves out the part where I own 40% of Ironclad Fabrication, a metal construction company worth over $3 million. To her friends, I'm just a guy with grease under his fingernails. That Tuesday, I got home around 6:30. Eileen was plating salmon from that overpriced market on 5th Street. Dinner's almost ready, she said without looking up. I washed my hands and grabbed wine glasses. We sat down to eat. The salmon looked perfect, probably from a recipe Bethany Pembroke had shared. Bethany and her husband Trevor, the golden couple Eileen couldn't stop talking about. We ate in silence at first. Then she started. Bethany and Trevor just got back from Napa, Eileen said, cutting her fish with that careful precision she uses when she's building up to something. He surprised her with a long weekend. Hot air balloons, private tastings, the whole thing. I nodded. That's nice. Nice. She set down her fork. That's all you have to say. I knew where this was headed. I'd heard variations of this conversation 100 times. What do you want me to say, Eileen? She took a long sip of wine. Why can't you be more like Bethany's husband? Trevor plans things. He makes grand gestures. He rebuilt their entire deck by himself last summer. Takes her to new restaurants. Got her a vintage bicycle for their anniversary. She gestured at me with her glass. And you? You just exist. Those words hit like a hammer. But I didn't flinch. I set down my fork, wiped my mouth with my napkin, and looked her straight in the eye. Then marry him, I said quietly. Eileen blinked. What did you just say? You heard me. If Trevor's everything you want, you should have married him instead. Her face flushed red. God, Mitchell, you're so sensitive. I was just making a point. But I wasn't being sensitive. I was being clear. For the first time in years. Actually, I stood up, pushed my chair back, and walked upstairs without another word. I could hear her calling after me, her tone shifting from indignant to apologetic. But I didn't stop. I went to my office, closed the door, and sat at my desk. That's when I started planning my exit. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry or heartbroken, but because I was planning. Around 2 a.m, I pulled out the file folder I'd kept in my office safe for the past 6 months. The one Eileen didn't know existed. Inside were bank statements for the account I'd opened under my business LLC, copies of our mortgage documents, the prenuptial agreement her father had insisted on before we married, the one that clearly outlined separate property provisions, financial records showing my 40% ownership stake in Ironclad Fabrication, valued at $1.3 million as of our last quarterly assessment. I'd been preparing for this longer than I wanted to admit. Not consciously at first. It started 8 months ago when I overheard Eileen on the phone with Bethany, laughing about how I was her stable choice after her first engagement fell through. Trevor's exciting, she'd said, but Mitchell's reliable. He's not going anywhere. She was wrong about that last part. At 4:30 a.m, I wrote the letter. Not a long one. Just facts, laid out clean and simple. Eileen, I listened to you compare me to other men for years. I excused it as stress, as jokes, as harmless venting. But last night when you said I just exist, something became clear. Existing isn't what hurts. What hurts is realizing that's all I've ever been allowed to do with you. I'm done existing in someone else's shadow. The house is yours per the prenup. I've transferred my half of the joint savings to a separate account, which is my legal right. Don't look for me. Don't call my family. I'm not missing. I'm just finished. I didn't sign it with love or regrets. Just my name. At 5:15, I loaded my truck with the 2 duffel bags I'd packed the night before. Clothes, documents, my grandfather's watch, the photo albums from before Eileen. Everything else could stay. I walked back inside one last time. The house was silent except for the ticking of that kitchen clock I'd installed 3 years ago. The one Eileen said was too plain compared to Bethany's antique piece. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter, right where she'd set her coffee every morning for the past decade. Then I did something that felt both symbolic and final. I slid my wedding ring off my finger. It came off easier than I expected, leaving a pale band of skin that would fade in time. I set the ring on top of the envelope. The metal caught the under-cabinet light I'd turned on, glinting like a small, cold eye. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, waiting to feel something. Regret, maybe. Sadness. But all I felt was relief, like a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. I didn't slam the door on my way out. I didn't leave tire marks in the driveway. I just drove away, heading west toward the property I'd purchased 4 months ago under the LLC, a small cabin 2 states over that Eileen had no idea existed. Behind me, the house stayed dark and quiet. In a few hours, she'd wake up. She'd shuffle to the kitchen in that silk robe she wore, reach for a coffee mug, and see the envelope. She'd see the ring. And for the first time in our marriage, she'd understand that some decisions can't be argued away or apologized out of. Some decisions are just final. Eileen found the letter at 6:45 in the morning. I know because my business partner Jake called me at 7:30 while I was crossing the state line into Pennsylvania. "Your wife just called the shop," Jake said, his voice careful. "She's looking for you. Sounds pretty upset. What did you tell her?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the road. "That you took personal time. Didn't specify how much. She asked for your cell number, and I told her she already had it." "Thanks, Jake. Mitch, you okay? You need anything?" "I'm good. Actually better than I've been in years. Listen, I'll be out of pocket for a bit, but I'll stay on top of the hospital contract remotely. Email me if anything urgent comes up." There was a pause. "Take care of yourself, brother." I hung up and turned off my phone. Not airplane mode, completely off. Then I pulled the SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it out the window at the next rest stop. The cabin I bought was in the Allegheny Mountains, 40 acres of nothing but pine trees and silence. I'd purchased it through the LLC 4 months ago after Eileen had spent an entire weekend gushing about the lake house Bethany and Trevor were building. While she fantasized about granite countertops and boat docks, I'd been securing my exit. I arrived just afternoon. The cabin was small, maybe 800 square feet, but it had everything I needed. Running water, electricity, a wood stove, and most importantly, no memories of Eileen's voice telling me I wasn't enough. I unloaded my truck and spent the afternoon settling in. Around 4, I walked the property line, checking the fence posts I'd installed during my last visit. The air smelled like pine and earth, clean in a way that made my lungs feel bigger. Meanwhile, back in our perfectly decorated house that I'd paid for, Eileen was falling apart. I know this because my sister Rachel texted me before I destroyed my phone. Eileen called me crying. "Said you left her. What happened?" I'd replied simply, "I got tired of being her backup plan." Rachel didn't push. She knew Eileen well enough. At my nephew's birthday party last month, she'd overheard Eileen telling her friends that I was dependable, but not exactly exciting. Rachel had pulled me aside later and said, "You know you deserve better than that, right?" Now, Eileen was calling everyone we knew. My mother, who told her coldly. If Mitchell left, he had his reasons. My friends from the shop, who suddenly couldn't remember seeing me. Even my accountant, who simply said, "I'm not at liberty to discuss Mr. Carlson's affairs." Every door she knocked on closed in her face. By evening, she'd moved past panic and into calculation. She tried accessing our joint checking account online, only to find her login credentials no longer worked. I called the bank 3 weeks ago and removed her as a signer, perfectly legal since the account was originally in my name and she'd been added later. She drove to the bank the next morning, according to Rachel, who heard it through Eileen's sister. The manager explained patiently that I'd restructured the account per the separation clause in our prenuptial agreement. Her name was removed. The joint savings had been divided equally, her half deposited into an account in her name only. But I didn't agree to separate, Eileen had apparently said, her voice shrill. "The prenup doesn't require mutual consent for financial separation, ma'am. Only notification, which was provided via certified mail 14 business days ago." That letter had gone to her office. She'd probably tossed it without opening it, assuming it was junk mail. Eileen left the bank and sat in her car for 20 minutes, phone in hand, staring at my contact info that now led nowhere. That's when reality started sinking in. I wasn't coming back to apologize. I wasn't hiding at a friend's house waiting for her to cool down. I was gone, and I'd planned every step of it while she was busy comparing me to Trevor Pembroke. 3 days after I left, Eileen discovered the first real crack in her carefully constructed life. She tried to use her credit card at that overpriced grocery store on 5th Street, the one where she always bought organic salmon and imported wine. The card declined. She tried again, thinking it was a mistake. Declined. At home, she logged into the credit card portal and stared at the screen. Account closed by primary cardholder. I'd canceled it 2 weeks before our final dinner. The card had been in my name, with her, as an authorized user. One phone call was all it took to remove her. She pulled out her backup card. Same result. I closed all 4 credit accounts that were technically mine, the ones I'd been paying off monthly while she racked up charges at boutiques and day spas. The only card that worked was the one in her name alone, the one with a $3,000 limit and a balance of $2,800. Eileen called her mother, voice trembling. He's cut me off from everything. The bank accounts, the credit cards, everything. Her mother, who'd never particularly liked me but tolerated me because I was stable, said something that made Eileen go quiet. I heard about it later from Rachel. Well, dear, they were his accounts. What did you expect? You spent years telling everyone he was just a welder. Did you think he'd keep funding your lifestyle after you push him away? That afternoon, Eileen did something she should have done years ago. She went to my shop. Ironclad Fabrication occupied a 3-acre lot on the industrial side of town, with 2 massive buildings and equipment worth millions. She'd never visited in all our years of marriage. It's dirty, she'd said once. Why would I want to see where you get greasy? Now she stood in the parking lot, staring at the sign. Ironclad Fabrication, Custom Metal Solutions. Owners, M. Carlson and J. Patterson. Owners, not employees. Owners. Jake saw her through the office window and came out, wiping his hands on a rag. Eileen, I need to speak with Mitchell, she said, trying to sound authoritative. He's not here. When will he be back? Jake looked at her with something close to pity. He's taken an extended leave. Personal matters. This is a personal matter. I'm his wife. Ma'am, I can't help you. If you want to discuss business, you'll need to contact the company attorney. Business? I don't care about business. I need to find my husband. Jake's expression hardened slightly. Then I really can't help you. Mitchell's personal life is his own. She tried calling my cell again from the parking lot, straight to a message that the number was no longer in service. She sat in her car, hands shaking, and that's when it hit her. Everything she thought she knew about me was wrong. I wasn't just a welder. I was a co-owner of a multi-million-dollar company. I wasn't passive. I was strategic. I hadn't left impulsively. I'd planned this for months, maybe longer, while she was busy holding me up against Trevor Pembroke's imaginary perfection. That evening, she called Bethany. She needed someone to validate her feelings, to tell her I was being unreasonable, that men like me didn't just walk away from 22 years of marriage. He just left, Eileen said, her voice breaking. Didn't even try to work things out. After everything I've done for him. There was a pause on Bethany's end. What exactly have you done for him, Eileen? The question landed like ice water. What do you mean? I've been his wife for over 20 years. I've supported him. Supported him how? By constantly comparing him to Trevor? By telling everyone at my dinner parties that he was your safe choice? By making him feel small every chance he got? Eileen's breath caught. You're supposed to be my friend. I'm your friend. That's why I'm being honest. You spent years treating Mitchell like he was lucky to have you. Maybe you finally figured out it was the other way around. Bethany hung up. Eileen sat alone in the house I'd renovated with my own hands, surrounded by furniture I'd paid for, and realized that every person she called was giving her the same message. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was consequences. 2 weeks after I left, Eileen received a certified letter from Bradford & Associates, the law firm that handled my business affairs. She signed for it at the door, hands shaking, probably hoping it was some kind of communication from me. It wasn't. Inside was a notice of legal separation and a detailed breakdown of assets, per our prenuptial agreement. She sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she'd told me I just existed, and read through page after page of financial revelations. My 40% stake in Ironclad Fabrication, valued at $1.32 million. A trust fund for my grandmother that activated upon marriage dissolution, $340,000. 3 rental properties I'd purchased through the LLC over the past 8 years. Combined equity of $580,000. Investment accounts in my name only, $267,000. She thought I was a welder living paycheck to paycheck. Instead, I had a net worth of over $2 million, and she'd never known because she'd never asked. She'd been too busy comparing me to Trevor Pembroke, who it turned out was financing his lifestyle on borrowed time. The letter outlined what she was entitled to: the house, which was paid off and worth about $425,000. Her car, which I'd bought outright. Half of our joint savings, which she'd already received. And that was it. Everything else was separate property under the prenup her father had insisted on. She called the attorney's office immediately. A paralegal answered. "I need to speak to someone about this separation agreement," Eileen said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mr. Bradford can schedule a consultation for next Thursday at 2. That's a week away. This can't wait." "Ma'am, Mr. Carlson filed everything properly. The assets listed are his separate property, acquired before and during the marriage, but maintained separately per the prenuptial agreement you signed in 2001. If you'd like to contest the division, you'll need your own attorney." Eileen hung up and immediately called 3 law firms. Every consultation said the same thing. The prenup was airtight. I'd been meticulous about keeping my business and investment income separate. She had no claim to any of it. That afternoon, she did something desperate. She drove to my mother's house. My mother answered the door, looked at Eileen with cool appraisal, and said, "What do you want?" "I need to talk to Mitchell. Please, I just need to know he's okay." "He's fine. Better than he's been in years, actually." "Mrs. Carlson, please. I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We've been married for 22 years. My mother's expression hardened. "You spent those 22 years making my son feel like he wasn't good enough. I watched you chip away at him, little comment by little comment. He'd come to Sunday dinners and barely say a word because you'd spent the whole week telling him he was less than everyone else." Eileen's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant to hurt him. Meaning to and doing are two different things. You hurt him anyway. Now he's done being hurt, and frankly, I don't blame him." My mother stepped back. "Don't come here again." The door closed with a soft click that felt final as a gunshot. Eileen sat in her car outside my mother's house and cried for the first time since I'd left. Not because she missed me, but because she was finally understanding what she'd lost. Not just a husband, but a man who'd built an empire quietly while she mocked his work clothes. 3 weeks after I disappeared, Eileen's carefully constructed world collapsed completely. It started with a phone call from Bethany, whose voice sounded strained and unfamiliar. "Eileen, I need to tell you something before you hear it from someone else." "What is it?" "Trevor and I are separating. We're selling the house." Eileen felt the words like a physical blow. "What? But you two are perfect together. You just got back from Napa. You were remodeling." "We were faking it," Bethany interrupted, her voice cracking. "All of it. The Napa trip? Trevor paid for it by refinancing our mortgage. The deck he built? We're $40,000 in debt to contractors because he couldn't finish it himself and had to hire people. The vintage bike? Bought on a credit card we can't pay off." Eileen's mouth went dry. "I don't understand. Trevor's been living above our means for years, trying to maintain this image. And I went along with it because I liked how it looked. But it was all smoke and mirrors, Eileen. We're broke. Worse than broke. We're filing for bankruptcy. But at my dinner party, you said..." I said what Trevor told me to say. I bragged about things we couldn't afford because I was embarrassed to admit the truth. Bethany's voice turned bitter. "You know what's really funny? You spent years wishing Mitchell was more like Trevor. Mitchell, who apparently owns a multi-million-dollar business and never felt the need to brag about it. You had the real deal, and you traded it for my imitation." The line went quiet except for Bethany's breathing. "There's more," Bethany said softly. "Trevor's been cheating on me. With multiple women. One of them is someone you know." Eileen's stomach dropped. "Who?" "Your sister-in-law, Christine. They've been seeing each other for 8 months." The phone slipped from Eileen's hand. Christine was her brother's wife, someone she trusted, someone who'd been at family dinners and holiday gatherings. And Trevor, the man she'd held up as the gold standard of husbands, had been sleeping with her. Bethany continued, voice hollow. "I'm telling you this because you need to understand something. You destroyed your marriage chasing a fantasy. Trevor wasn't a better man than Mitchell. He was just a better liar. And I enabled it because I was too proud to admit we were struggling." She hung up. Eileen sat in the silence of her empty house and felt the full weight of her choices. She compared Mitchell to a fraud, criticized him for being exactly what she should have valued. Honest, hard-working real. While Trevor was performing masculinity like a stage show, Mitchell was actually being a man, quietly building wealth and security without needing applause. That evening, she pulled out her laptop and did something she should have done years ago. She searched for ironclad fabrication. The website showed projects across 3 states: hospital wings, commercial buildings, custom architectural metalwork, testimonials from satisfied clients, awards for craftsmanship and safety. She clicked on the About Us page and saw a photo of Mitchell and Jake standing in front of one of their fabricated structures, both wearing hard hats and work clothes. Mitchell looked confident, capable, proud of what he'd built. She'd never seen that expression on his face at home. Because at home, she'd made sure he knew he wasn't enough. Eileen closed the laptop and walked through the house. Every room held evidence of Mitchell's care. The crown molding he'd installed, the hardwood floors he'd refinished, the updated electrical he'd rewired himself, the kitchen backsplash he'd tiled one weekend while she complained it wasn't as nice as Bethany's. Bethany, whose kitchen was about to be foreclosed on. Eileen sank into the couch Mitchell had reupholstered 2 years ago and finally understood the difference between a man who performs and a man who provides. She'd had the latter and convinced herself she wanted the former. Now she had neither. 1 month after I left, Eileen hit rock bottom in the most public way possible. It happened at her cousin's outdoor wedding reception, the kind of event where appearances mattered and gossip spread like wildfire. She'd almost skipped it, but her mother had insisted, saying she needed to show her face and not let people think Mitchell broke her. So she put on a dress, fixed her makeup, and driven to the vineyard venue trying to convince herself she could hold it together for 3 hours. She lasted 90 minutes. The trouble started when her aunt pulled her aside near the dessert table. "Sweetie, how are you holding up? We heard about Mitchell." "I'm managing," Eileen said, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. "It's just so shocking. 22 years, and he just walks away? There must have been signs." Before Eileen could respond, her cousin Jennifer joined them, wine glass in hand. "I always thought Mitchell was so steady. Boring maybe, but reliable. What happened?" The word boring hit a nerve. That's what Eileen had thought. That's what she told everyone. That's why she compared him to Trevor constantly, trying to push him into being something more exciting, more impressive, more like what she thought she wanted. "It's complicated," Eileen managed. "Well, at least he got the house, right?" her aunt said. "That's something." Jennifer leaned in conspiratorially. "I heard he owns some big company. Is that true? Because if it is, you should fight for half of it. Don't let him walk away with everything." Eileen's hand started shaking. There was a prenup. "A prenup?" Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. "So you get nothing?" "I get what's fair. The house, my car, half the savings. While he keeps millions." Jennifer shook her head. "That's not fair, Eileen. You were married for over 20 years. You should get a lawyer and fight this." "I did get a lawyer." Eileen snapped, her voice rising. 3 of them. They all said the same thing. "The prenup is legal. Everything Mitchell built, he built separately. I have no claim to it." People nearby were starting to turn and look. Her aunt touched her arm. "Honey, maybe we should." "No." Eileen pulled away, her control finally shattering. "You want to know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. I spent 22 years telling my husband he wasn't good enough. I compared him to other men. I made him feel small. I told him he just existed, like he was furniture I was tolerating instead of a person I'd married." Tears were streaming down her face now, mascara running. And you know what? He listened. For years, he listened to every criticism, every comparison, every dismissive comment. Until one day, he stopped listening and started planning. And by the time I realized what I had, he was already gone. The reception had gone quiet around her. 50 people watching her fall apart. Mitchell wasn't boring. She continued, her voice breaking. He was stable. He wasn't unambitious. He was successful without needing to brag about it. He built a multi-million-dollar business while I mocked his work clothes. He donated thousands to charity while I complained he didn't take me to expensive restaurants. He was everything I should have wanted, and I was too stupid to see it. Her mother appeared at her elbow. "Eileen, let's go outside." The man I compared him to. Eileen ignored her mother, still talking to Jennifer and her aunt, and everyone else listening. "Trevor Pembroke? He's bankrupt, cheating on his wife, built his whole life on credit cards and lies. and I held them up as the standard Mitchell should meet. She laughed, a horrible sound. I had gold and traded it for fool's gold. And now I'm standing here alone because I couldn't appreciate what was real. Her mother finally pulled her away, guiding her outside to the parking lot. Eileen collapsed against her car, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "Why didn't you tell me?" her mother asked quietly. "About what you said to him." "Because I didn't think it mattered," Eileen choked out. "I thought he'd always be there, that I could say whatever I wanted and he'd just take it because that's what he always did." "Oh, sweetheart." Her mother's voice was sad, but not sympathetic. "Everyone has a breaking point. You just never thought you'd find his." Inside the reception, the gossip was already spreading. By morning, half their social circle would know the truth. Eileen hadn't been abandoned. She'd driven away a good man through years of contempt, and now she was paying the price. 2 months after I left Eileen, I was sitting on the porch of my cabin watching the sun set over the mountains when Jake called. "Got a business proposition for you," he said without preamble. "I'm listening." Hospital project came in under budget and ahead of schedule. The administrator was so impressed. She referred us to 2 more medical facilities looking for custom metalwork. "We're talking contracts worth over $2 million combined." I leaned back in my chair, a beer in my hand and nothing but quiet around me. "That's good news. It's better than good. It's growth. But we'll need to expand capacity. Maybe bring on another welder. Invest in new equipment." He paused. "I know you're on personal leave, but I need to know you're still in this." "I'm in it, Jake. Always have been. The personal stuff doesn't change the business." "Good, because I've got your back on both fronts." His voice softened. "How you doing out there?" "Better than I've been in years. I'm working with my hand again, fixing up this place. No one telling me I'm not enough. Just me, the woods, and actual peace." "You seeing anyone?" Jake asked carefully. I smiled. "Not yet, but I'm not opposed to it. Just want to make sure the divorce is finalized first. Should be final in about 4 months, once the waiting period is up." "Eileen's still trying to contact you?" "Through the lawyer, yeah. Wanted to talk, to explain, to work things out." I took a sip of beer. "But there's nothing to work out. Some things, once they're broken, they stay broken." "Amen to that." Jake shifted topics. "Listen, I'm sending you the contracts digitally. Review them when you can. And Mitch, I'm glad you got out. Life's too short to spend it with someone who doesn't see your worth." After he hung up, I sat there thinking about worth. For 22 years, I'd let Eileen define mine. I'd let her comparisons and criticisms shape how I saw myself. Not consciously, but it happened anyway, the way water shapes stone over time. Out here, away from her voice, I'd started remembering who I was before I became her project to fix. A man who built things, who solved problems, who helped people without needing credit, who was content with simple pleasures, good work, cold beer, sunrise over mountains. I'd started running again, something I'd given up years ago because Eileen said it was a waste of time. I'd started cooking actual meals instead of grabbing takeout to avoid her criticism of my technique. I'd even started sketching again, rough designs for metalwork projects, something I used to love before she dismissed it as a hobby. Slowly, I was becoming myself again. A week later, I drove into town for supplies. The small Montana community knew me as the quiet guy who'd bought the old Sawyer property and was fixing it up. They didn't know my history, didn't care about my failed marriage. To them, I was just Mitchell, the man who helped old Tom replace his fence posts and show the hardware store owner's kid how to weld. At the diner, I sat at the counter and ordered coffee. The waitress, a woman around my age named Sarah, smiled when she poured it. "How's the cabin coming along?" "Getting there. Replaced the porch boards yesterday. Working on the roof next." "You're handy." She refilled my cup. "Most people would hire that out. I like working with my hands. Keeps me grounded." She studied me for a moment. "You're not from around here originally, are you?" "Pennsylvania. Needed a change of scenery." Sarah nodded like she understood. "Well, Montana's good for fresh starts. I came here 5 years ago after my divorce. Haven't looked back since." We talked for a few more minutes before other customers needed attention. It wasn't flirting exactly, just 2 people who'd survived hard things recognizing something familiar in each other. When I left, she'd written her number on the receipt. "If you ever need help with anything around the property, or just want to grab coffee that isn't diner coffee." I pocketed the receipt and drove back to the cabin with something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Not just for romance, though maybe that would come, but possibility for a life where I wasn't constantly measured and found wanting, where I could just be, without apology or explanation. For months after I left, the divorce became final. I signed the papers at a notary office in a small Montana town, my attorney handling everything remotely. Eileen got the house, her car, and half the joint savings as outlined in the prenup. I kept everything I built separately. Clean, legal, final. That same week, Jay convinced me to fly back to Pennsylvania to sign the new hospital contracts in person. The clients want to meet the co-owner, he said. Shows commitment. I agreed, booking a hotel near the shop, planning to stay 3 days maximum. I had no intention of going anywhere near my old neighborhood or reaching out to anyone from my previous life. But fate had other plans. I was at a coffee shop near the industrial district, reviewing contract specifications on my laptop, when I heard a familiar voice. Mitchell. I looked up. Bethany Pembroke stood there, looking thinner than I remembered, lines of stress etched around her eyes. She was alone, no sign of Trevor. Bethany, I acknowledged, keeping my tone neutral. Can I sit? Just for a minute. I gestured to the empty chair. She sat down slowly, clutching her purse like a shield. I heard you were back in town. Jake mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to someone else. She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Small world. Small town, I corrected. I'm only here for business. Leaving tomorrow. Right. Of course. She looked down at her hands. Mitchell, I owe you an apology. A big one. I waited, not making it easier for her. I knew what Eileen was doing. The comparisons, the constant criticism. And I fed into it. I'd tell her about things Trevor did, knowing she'd use them against you. I thought it was harmless girl talk. I didn't realize I was helping her destroy her marriage. Trevor's things, I said carefully. The ones he did on credit cards he couldn't pay off. Bethany flinched. Yes, those things. We lost the house last month. Filed bankruptcy. The divorce will be final in 6 weeks. She looked at me directly. Everything I made Eileen envy was a lie, Mitchell. And I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. I appreciate the apology, I said. But it doesn't change anything. Eileen made her choices. You might have influenced them, but she's the one who decided I wasn't enough. She knows better now. She's devastated. I closed my laptop. Bethany, I'm going to be straight with you. I don't care if Eileen's devastated. I spent 22 years being made to feel inadequate. I'm not interested in her regrets or her growth journey or whatever revelation she's had. I'm done. She wants to see you. To apologize. Tell her the apology isn't necessary. Tell her I hope she finds whatever she's looking for. But tell her I won't be part of it. I stood, gathering my things. Take care of yourself, Bethany. And maybe next marriage, build it on truth instead of performance. I left her sitting there and didn't look back. That evening, Jake and I had dinner at a steakhouse downtown. He'd been my business partner for 15 years, but more than that, he'd been my friend. How you feeling? He asked after we'd ordered. Relieved. The divorce is done. The contracts are signed, and I'm flying back to Montana tomorrow. Everything's tied up neat. You're really staying out there? For now. Maybe permanently. I've got the cabin fixed up nice. I've got the business running smooth with you here. And I've got peace. I took a sip of whiskey. That's worth more than anything. Jake nodded slowly. You seeing anyone? I thought of Sarah from the diner. How we'd had coffee twice now. How easy it felt to talk to someone who didn't carry baggage about who I used to be. Maybe. Taking it slow. Making sure I'm whole before I bring someone into my life. Smart man. Jake raised his glass. To new chapters. To new chapters, I echoed. The next morning, I flew back to Montana without once driving past my old house or the life I'd left behind. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. 10 months after I walked out of that kitchen with Eileen's voice still ringing in my ears, I was standing on my completed porch watching the sunrise when my phone buzzed. A text from my sister Rachel. Thought you should know. Eileen's moving. Sold the house. Heading to Arizona to be near her sister. I read it twice, then deleted it. Her geography wasn't my concern anymore. The cabin behind me was transformed. New roof, updated electrical, refinished floors, modern kitchen. I'd done most of the work myself, the way I'd done everything in the house Eileen now sold. But this time, every nail I drove and every board I laid was for me alone. Sarah's truck pulled up the drive around 8. She got out carrying a box of pastries from the bakery in town, her smile easy and genuine. "Morning," she called. "Thought you might want breakfast before we head to the lake. We've been seeing each other for 3 months now. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just two people who'd survived bad marriages learning how to trust again." "You're spoiling me," I said, kissing her cheek. "You rebuilt my entire back deck for free. I think pastries are the least I can do." We sat on the porch eating croissants and drinking coffee while the mountains turned gold in the morning light. This was what peace felt like. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of contentment. "I got a call from my daughter yesterday," Sarah said. "She wants to visit for Thanksgiving. Bring her husband and the kids." "That's great. You must be excited." "I am, but I wanted to check with you first. I know we haven't done the family introduction thing yet." I set down my coffee and looked at her. "Sarah, I'd love to meet your family. Whenever you're ready for that." Her smile widened. "Okay, good, because I might have already told her about you." We spent a day at the lake, fishing and talking and enjoying the kind of easy companionship that doesn't require performance or pretense. On the drive back, Sarah asked the question I've been waiting for. "Do you ever think about your ex-wife?" Sometimes, I admitted. Not longing for her, just processing it. 22 years is a long time. Some of it was good before it went bad. "Do you regret leaving?" "Not for a second. I regret staying as long as I did. I should have left the first time she made it clear I was her backup plan, not her first choice." Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. "Her loss is my gain." That evening, after Sarah went home, I stood on my porch again. Somewhere in Arizona, Eileen was starting over too. I hoped she'd learn from what happened. I hoped she'd treat the next person better. But mostly, I hoped she'd find a way to be content with herself instead of constantly measuring her life against others. As for me, I'd already found what I was looking for. It wasn't in another person or another place. It was in the simple act of building a life that honored who I actually was instead of who someone else wanted me to be. I pulled out my phone and looked at a photo Jake had sent earlier. The new hospital wing we'd fabricated, gleaming steel and glass against blue sky. Our company name etched in the cornerstone. I'd built that, not for applause or recognition, but because it was good work done well. The same way I'd built this cabin, this property, this new life. And unlike the marriage I'd left behind, what I was building now was built on solid ground.